Hey everyone, welcome back to their Hardware News Recap for the week. In this one, we'll be talking about IGN acquiring Gamer Network. Mainly because when I woke up and checked the news, I saw IGN acquires GN as a title, and I was like, wait, what? I immediately began making plans for a 1 through 10 rating system where we'd only use the options of 8 through 10, and sometimes 7 if it's really bad. And then I found out that it was Gamer Network and not us. But we'll also be talking about new AMD Epyc CPUs that are for desktop platforms. Actually super cool. Noctua has a painfully priced set of Noctua home products, like frames for fans that are exceedingly expensive to mount them to furniture. Before that, this video is brought to you by Montech and the King95 Pro case. The King95 Pro is a dual chamber enclosure with configurable options for storage and power supplies. The K95 has a deep 35mm cable channel for management, support for dual power supplies if you want it, which could be useful for a Threadripper system, and ample radiator and fan mounting options scattered around the top, back, bottom, side, and front of the case. The front also can be mesh or solid, with the mesh running a higher porosity for more breathability. Learn more at the link in the description below. First up, a call for some community help from you all. We would like some answers for a survey to try and better understand some of the GPU power cable and connector situation. So we've been working on a 12-volt high power deep dive on and off for the past year or so now. Because we have some remaining questions we'd like to just kind of close the loop on and get to the bottom of. We last looked into 12-volt high power back when it had first launched. It was a very fluid situation, very fast-paced. There's new information daily. And now, with all this extra time in between for the situation to really fully develop, we would like to get some insight from the audience on what it looks like. And it's time to kind of dig deep on this. So here's what we've got going on. We have a Google form that we've created, and we would like everyone to fill it out. So that includes people who have never used 12-volt high power. It includes people with failures, people who have not had a failure but have used it, people who've had failures with PCIe 6 and 8 pins, and again, just to really emphasize here, also people who have never had a GPU power cable failure of any kind, or those who haven't even used one of the two kind of main types of them. The goal is to use this form to collect as much neutral data as possible. We think the audience, the community in general, is probably the sort of cleanest source of information for this, because we can talk to manufacturers off or maybe on record. End of the day, though, I personally would just trust the audience more to get us just the volume we need of answers to kind of better understand things. So this data will only be used by GN. It will be presented in a video, but it'll be an aggregate. So you're going to be a number in a chart effectively, and we'll produce that at the end of our deep dive research we're doing right now. The link's in the description. You can also go to the URL. We're going to put it on the screen right now if you want to type it in. It is a Genius link, so it's geni.us/GPU PWR. So genie.us/GPU PWR basically is what it is. Now, this deep dive is going to take probably another couple months, so it'll be a little while. We have some time to collect answers from the audience, and then we also have time to finish conducting some interviews we're doing, some additional failure lab analysis. We've actually sent in some adapters we'll talk about as well. So the form asks you a few things. It asks if you've had a GPU power cable failure ever. Again, that includes 12-volt high power and 6 or 8 pin. It asks follow-ups. If you answer yes, if you answer no, then that's it. It's those two questions. You can scroll to the bottom and submit the form. There's a natural tendency to report failures. So again, we want to emphasize that we consider it equally important for everyone with and without a failure of some kind to answer the survey. We want as clean data as we can get. There's no way to eliminate sample bias, but hopefully by just kind of emphasizing that repeatedly, we'll get as close as we can to it. Now, as for the content, so we have a lot coming up for this. It'll be another couple months, like I said. We sent in some cable mod adapters to a failure analysis lab to look at how the specific adapters we sent in failed. It's really interesting. I actually have some cross sections. Maybe we'll show one of them in B-roll. And these were unique enough design or manufacturing failures that cable mod recalled them. We covered that previously, so they did a US recall. We wanted to learn more about that. We sent them in. The story isn't only about them, though. They're a part of it, but we're going to be looking at big picture stuff. So the ATX spec, PCI SIG submissions, NVIDIA, Dell involvement, the history of design, and hopefully some numbers from our viewers. We're working on this as a completely clean slate. If you please take a few minutes to fill out that form, it's linked down below. You can do it while you're listening to the rest of this episode, and we consider this to be one of the most important parts of our research for the upcoming piece, so we'll leave this open for a while, and we'll be reminding you about it over the next month or two in various news updates to just try and get as much as we can, so thanks for your patience with that. The only way we can really come to any kind of useful data here is if we have a large volume of submissions and answers, and we appreciate your help as we continue on this research piece, and we'll be putting it together over the next whole month. So remember again that we want to hear about your experience with all types of GPU power cables, and I think that pretty much recaps it. So looking forward to following it up, but let's move on to the next story. All right, we're starting with the big acquisition, which is IGN buying a bunch of stuff. The tech industry has been consolidating its media publications for decades now, so big names like Ziff Davis, Perch, and Future have been in the game. There's a couple others out there as well, and own several of the properties on the web. This is also true of the gaming space. And then, of course, game development space, we've been talking about acquisitions, Microsoft buying every studio it can so that it can then lay those people off. Interesting strategy. We'll see how it works. On May 21st, IGN announced that it had acquired Gamer Network, which includes outlets like Dicebreaker, Eurogamer, GamesIndustry.biz, Rock Paper Shotgun, which I've actually really liked historically, and VG 24/7. IGN notes that Gamer Network, quote, also holds shares in Outside Xbox, Digital Foundry, and Hookshot, which operates Nintendo Life, Push Square, Pure Xbox, and Time Extension. When we went to IGN's news section to learn about IGN's acquisition, we found it amusing that IGN's subheader on IGN's story about IGN's acquisition read, quote, the digital brands have been acquired for an undisclosed sum, which makes it sound like a third-party report on the acquisition. How much was it for? We don't know. Also, we bought it, but we don't know. To be fair, the writer probably wasn't informed on that. But IGN had sort of their cheeky way of saying, we're not going to tell you. IGN's the largest games media publication. It's owned by Ziff Davis. Ziff Davis bought it in 2013, and Ziff Davis is from like the 1920s and owns just a lot of tech, hobby, gaming, and health publications. It's a massive conglomerate that specializes in being able to sell ads, is kind of my read on it. But along with IGN, the aforementioned Gamer Network publications will also join Map Genie, How Long to Beat, and Humble Bundle. At one point, Ziff Davis also ran OneUp.com, UGO.com, GameSpy.com. Probably a lot of you remember GameSpy before their respective closures, so we'll pour one out for them. But in some ways, the big media conglomerates feel kind of like automakers where there's a ton of different badges on cars, but ultimately, if you kind of follow the traces back up, there's not that many owners of all of those brands, and a lot of them end up being owned by the same companies. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here. Now, Ziff Davis also owns PC Mag, Mashable, and I thought this was an interesting Speed Test, not a media site, but an interesting one. And for reference, some of the mega conglomerates in the space, aside from them, include Future, which is, it previously owned Maximum PC before that one closed. It currently owns Tom's Guide, PC Gamer, Tech Radar, and several sites that are outside of our space. Subsequently owns Anantech, Tom's Hardware, and then again some that are outside of our space or that I'm unfamiliar with. So generally speaking, the massive conglomerates sort of squeeze SEO out of properties and stuff them with as many ads as they can. What we're curious about here is if IGN does that with its new properties, because IGN, I guess if someone wants to start cataloging Rock, Paper, Shotgun and the other acquisitions here today and then do it again over the next year, what I'd be curious to see is how much does the page layout change and how do the ad interactions change on those sites? Because I don't think you make these huge acquisitions unless you're trying to find a way to change the content to stuff it with SEO and try to boost it to just generate more page visits and ad views, or if you're going to just stuff it with more ads but keep the content the same. I guess there's room for in between, but call it cynical, I guess, but as an opinion, when these mega conglomerates are involved, it's really hard to see a motive other than we can make more money than they're making now and get our investment back, because otherwise, why would you do it? Maybe a little different for the smaller groups, but these are all is huge at this point. So, all right, big consolidation in gaming media then. Next one, AMD Epyc entry-level CPUs. This is actually really cool. So AMD's announced Epyc CPUs for the AM5 socket, and that means you'll be able to get Epyc parts in a consumer platform, which has some interesting trade-offs. We aren't well-versed in the server CPU space in general, so we're going to keep this to as much of just the news as we can, and then what I want to do with this is link up with Wendell from Level 1 Techs at hopefully Computex in about 2 weeks or so. Link up with him and maybe do something talking about this, or just build a system with him when we get back. All right, so the news. These Epyc 4004 series chips create a new entry level for the server market. The enterprise market generally seeks out features like platform security, management, official support for error-correcting RDIMMs, things like that. They also typically favor stability over just about anything else for servers. Under the lid, the new SKUs are familiar to Ryzen desktop CPUs. They range from 4 to 16 cores, with 2 3D V-cache variants mixed in. Official AMD TDPs range from 65 to 170 watts. Desktop limitations, such as only having 2 memory channels and being limited to single socket configurations, still apply, as right now there are no dual socket AM5 motherboards to our knowledge, but that would be one hell of a board, and I would want to buy it for a video if ever one is made. It seems not likely though. Despite these limitations, AMD thinks they'll offer much better performance for the price compared to equivalent Intel Xeons. Not a surprise that AMD would think that. Anantech reported on pricing and shows that prices range from $230 for the 6-core up to $700 for the 16-core. Also though, there's a new 4-core part, which is called the 4124P, that should go for $150. And given the general dearth of 4-core parts from AMD, at least good ones in recent years, that's kind of on its own something that maybe we'll buy and do a video with. If we mess with these though, it'll likely be in collaboration with Wendell, so check back for that. Love working with him on stuff, and a PC build sounds like a fun way to work with these. All right, next one. This is a quick but kind of fun follow-up story to the NVIDIA and MediaTek maybe working together on a handheld product that we ran last week. That was a rumor. This week, there's one more breadcrumb leading to a potential future for NVIDIA in the world of AI PCs. Yep, that's what they're called now. The term was coined recently to drive sales, and I've even seen it in retail establishments. So it's a thing. I guess we'll all have to get used to it. Now, this also means that the PC comes with neural network processing capabilities locally. And Bloomberg held an interview with CEOs Jensen Huang of NVIDIA and Michael Dell of Dell. It's why you come to us for the news. We can put those things together. Also, Bill McDermott of ServiceNow, where Bloomberg posed the question.
Jensen, where is NVIDIA's place in the AI PC? I know you as gaming. That's, again, I grew up with the gaming side of NVIDIA. Do you have a place in the AI PC market?
Come back next year. Exactly. There are a bunch of NVIDIA GPUs and Dell PCs.
So that's ominous and kind of an indicator as to the answer. Jensen Huang pivots the conversation away from this to generalities about how impactful AI will be in gaming and productivity and basically consumer-type tasks. And Bloomberg then pushed again, asking directly if NVIDIA plans to make a CPU and GPU combo for PCs like what it did with Grace Hopper in the data center, which I really respect from the reporter to ask the question again in as direct a way as possible. Predictably, though, Jensen Huang deflected, but I did think it was a good way to follow up the question. Here's the deflection.
We want to support every CPU the world makes. And there are places that want x86, we support x86. Yes. There are places that prefer ARM, we support ARM.
Every CPU, maybe even their own, is our read on that one. Now, it's clear that Huang wants to keep his poker face, pretty good at it, and doesn't want to play along with the teasing and hinting game that Michael Dell was maybe going for. But it looks like they're maybe doing something, and NVIDIA's been working with ARM for a little while now, so we wouldn't be surprised. It would be potentially a major shakeup in the market, though. It's a sector that NVIDIA hasn't yet really capitalized on in the same way it's done with GPUs and now software. And when the company grows that big, I guess if they want infinite growth, it makes sense they start looking to other parts of the market that they fill. All right, TCL has a showcase of a 1000 hertz monitor. Now, the downside, we hate to inform them of this after they've already done all this research and development and manufacturing. They have all this cost in it. But unfortunately, the human eye can only see 24 FPS. It's just a known fact. It's kind of confusing why they did this. But the good news is that for every doubling of 24, you actually can see the future by 1 second. Pretty cool. This LCD features a 4K resolution screen. Blurbusters.com, which is a website dedicated to displays and high refresh rate testing, reported on the monitor and wrote, quote, "We had expected 1000 hertz to arrive, but we didn't expect it to debut at the 4K resolution before 1080p and 1440p. So it's fantastic to go straight to 4K, they said," end quote. The highest refresh rate consumer market monitors we're aware of go up to 540 hertz. We don't really cover monitors, but this would be a massive jump from 540. TCL CSOT is a subsidiary of TCL that brands itself on, quote, "promoting the development of next-generation display technologies." No word on how the company was able to push refresh rates that high yet from an engineering white paper standpoint, or when and how much a panel like that might cost, at least at the time of writing. But this monitor will give a big advantage, because if you think about it, if you're able to hit that 1000 FPS mark on a 1000 hertz display, that means you will be able to see 41.6, I think, repeating seconds into the future, based on our earlier math of every doubling gets you another second into the future. That's not true. Before a bunch of stock traders go out and buy this monitor. It's not, just to be really clear, maybe for legal reasons, it's not how that works, but, or maybe it is, and I don't want you to know that. Figure that one out. Up next, KINGPIN of EVGA fame has resurfaced, and it's on YouTube. So EVGA has slowed its operations, as you all know. It appears to be in basically a maintenance state at this point. We've covered the story plenty, and as we could have predicted alongside Jay's 2 cents and John Petty when the three of us broke that story, it looks like EVGA is mostly winded down in a lot of capacities. But there are still a few question marks that remain for some of the key people from EVGA, like KINGPIN. Now, our documentary we made following the slowdown showed EVGA's famed RMA center with some of the most skilled technicians in the industry. So you should check that out if you never watched it. But in a follow-up we made to that last year, we sort of did an exit interview documenting the departure of EVGA's motherboard engineers for the BIOS and firmware programming. Vince, aka KINGPIN, recently resurfaced in a self-made studio. It's actually occupying the old EVGA gaming center space, where he's starting to make a video series about things he's working on. He hinted at discussions with manufacturers in the industry and speaking, quote, with some more seriously than others, end quote, but didn't announce any immediate employment at any of the video card manufacturers. His most recent video is just sort of a fun watch using his engineering background. He demonstrated how claw machines, as in the ones where the claw drops down and you try to get something, are commonly rigged using voltage tricks. For our team, having been to Taiwan over a dozen times at this point, these things are all over the place there, and it's fun to kind of see how he gets his multimeter out for something different than a video card. He also shows how you can opposite rig them to always pay out, and his plan is to fill one with KINGPIN thermal paste and make it always pay out at Computex. So KINGPIN is planning to feature his thermal paste claw machine at Computex if G-Skill gives him some booth space, and we're hoping to catch up with him at the show to learn more about what he's working on in general, learn about the KPX stuff, maybe some of his video card manufacturer discussions, or just generally what he's doing today. So we'll probably have a follow-up on that. But for my part in all of this, I'm going to bring a lot of coins to that machine because we go through lots of thermal paste. All right, it's fun to see him resurface. Go check out his channel. We'll link it if you want to see what he's up to. Next one, MSI claims to improve its claw performance. So when we reviewed the MSI claw, we criticized the performance and the button quality. Ew. And the software, the stability, and just the general handling of it. But according to MSI, a recent BIOS and MSI Center M software update mean that the company is able to claw back some performance. MSI says that the most notable improvements it's tested come by the way of Forza Horizon 5, which sees a 30% uplift going from an average FPS of 59.4 to 77.5 under their tested settings. MSI also claims that games like Sons of the Forest, Helldivers 2, and Fortnite have seen notable bumps, improving performance by 23%, 20%, and 28% respectively. The latest BIOS is E1T4-1IMS.109, which is not the name of a monitor, but it should be. And MSI is simply calling it 109, for which we are thankful. The latest MSI Center M is 1.0.2405.1401, which MSI has simplified to 2405.1401. Not that big of a change, but we'll take it. And this coupling of BIOS and MSI Center M updates have come alongside some settings recommendations from MSI, which include resolution of 1080p, keeping in-game graphics quality low, setting XeSS to performance if applicable, disabling VSync, and turning off FPS limitations. We definitely disagree with some of these recommendations. They are largely scenario-driven, though. So one of them, like FPS limitations, enforcing an FPS limit can be very useful for things like battery life, and likewise, just having a blanket apply these settings doesn't really work for handhelds for a lot of reasons we've shown. But anyway, MSI says that it is, quote, actively working with Intel to optimize performance of the Claw, end quote, considering one of our major complaints, though, pertained to frame time pacing. That would be the area we'd really need to see some improvements. It's not just FPS. Like, average FPS improvements are great, and it's likely that the frame time pacing has improved with that, but the frame time pacing really was one of the biggest problems with that device. So next one, Noctua has just launched a new line of products for the home, and Noctua has called it I just get the name right here. It's all caps, so it's an acronym. They call it the Noctua HOME. If anyone could tell us what that stands for, we'd appreciate it. They capitalized each letter, so it means something. Anyway, the two main products for whatever HOME means are both fans. One is a desk or a room fan. It's $100, and the other one is a, quote, multi-purpose fan set for device cooling. That's $80. Taking a closer look at the NVFS1 room fan shows that it's one of Noctua's NFA12 by 25 120mm fans in a mount, with a fan grill attached to it, powered by an AC adapter with a large flow amplifying guide on the front. Noctua has shown this guide before at trade shows as far back as about 2018, but it's taken until now to launch. The NVFS2 is even less impressive. It's pretty much just some new and thicker rubber corners and gaskets attached to the same existing fan. Noctua bills this one for adding extra cooling to devices that don't have actual fan mounts on them, such as audio amplifiers, video game consoles, routers. They show them on top of a Phetdara. And it's clear that Noctua is pumping the price on these accessories, as the standalone 12-volt DC power supply is $30 alone, and the mount is $40. Oh, look, we're sure that it's a very nice fan mount. Maybe even great. It might even be the best fan mount. But $40, you buy their own fan and you strap that to the fan mount. It's a very expensive and kind of, I don't know, we don't see how these accessory components can command these prices. It's as simple as possible. It's also kind of weird that the Flow Optimizer guide, which was presumably CFD simulated, it's custom molded, it's like this big special thing, that's $15, but to add a bracket to an existing fan that you separately purchase, that's $40 on its own? All right. One of the things we genuinely appreciate about Noctua is that it is engineering first. So the company's ethos is sort of dedicated to this idea of, like, let's get the engineering right, timelines be damned, and let's ship something that's good. And we need more of that in the industry where companies do take time with things. But Noctua, a bit of constructive feedback for them here. It feels like Noctua has gotten so stuck on the concept of delivering perfection that it's created an analysis paralysis situation. Not only that, but now there's such an expectation for the next cooling product to be truly revolutionary that anything less than that is going to be disappointing to a lot of their customers. It's not a great spot to be, so they're going to have to ship something killer. As far as these home products, I don't really know how you get these prices and have it make sense. So we'll move on. Microsoft up last. So at its recent Build event, Microsoft unveiled Windows Recall, which takes screenshots of your working environment constantly, every 5 seconds. And as the name implies, it's designed to help you recall things or synonymously spy. It's more than taking a simple screenshot at regular intervals, but it allows users to search their PC's previous browsing history, enabling to look up things like names of products that might have been forgotten but on screen, access previously missed links, open up specific PowerPoint slides, things like that. This does, however, pose some privacy concerns, and by some, we mean literally all of them, such as stepping away from a computer and someone else searches up passwords or sensitive data, finding personal information, details useful in blackmail, or just confidential documents. Suddenly, laptop theft becomes a lot more profitable than just the laptop. Now, Microsoft does say that, quote, your snapshots are securely stored on your PC. Sure. The company also gives users control over how much space they can allocate to them so that it has a running limit before it just starts overwriting. And you could also disable the feature, but our concern would be if it's on by default, because Microsoft has toggles to disable things, and like Windows Update, for example, can be paused. They also have knobs that just re-enable after some time, like the pausing updates where it changes all the time, but in the past it was a 7-day thing. I think it was 3 at one point. Now it's like up to 4 weeks or something. So anyway, if it's on by default, we'd be concerned about that. The company says that you can also filter out specific websites, but right now that's the story. Now, as a business, I'll say that we would seriously consider Linux for certain systems, like ones that don't need access to Adobe Premiere, for example. Not sure how well it works or if it works at all in Linux. You can let me know in the comments. If this gets rolled out in a way that's uncontrollable. This is the slow stepping of progress, though, of continually introducing features disguised as useful, or maybe even in some ways legitimately useful, but which can create massive privacy and security concerns. I don't know, well, I'm pretty opinionated on it, so we'll just move on. We'll talk about that another time. All right. That's it for this news episode. Thanks for watching, as always. Check back for more. We have the Y70 case review. So if you wanted to see an ATX case review, it's been a while, they're fully back now. And then we also have a Corsair case review. Not sure if that's live yet. It will be within days. If not, we have a micro ATX case review and some more coming up. So thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.